China Global Television Network.
China and Russia agree to enhance their relationship. Sudanese health ministry says death toll not exceeding 46. UN scales up prevention measures as infection cases increase in the DR Congo. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. For those of you joining us across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. In business, EU officials hold the first formal meeting with government representatives in Zimbabwe. And in sports, South Africa stumbled to third defeat at the Cricket World Cup against India. We begin the bulletin in Russia, where Chinese President Xi Jinping continues his state visit of the nation. The two sides have agreed to enhance their relations to what is known as a comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era. The decision was made in talks between Xi and his counterpart, Vladimir Putin.
8 visits in 6 years. Chinese President Xi Jinping touches down on Russian soil as Beijing and Moscow celebrate 70 years of diplomatic ties. There's a warm welcome at the Kremlin. Xi and Putin spoke highly of the past 7 decades and vowed to take relations to a new level. President Xi said the 70th anniversary is a milestone and a new starting point, especially given the unprecedented transformation of the global environment. He said friendship between the two countries is permanent and will only get better with time. President Putin thanked his Chinese counterpart for his role in the two countries' ties and said it is good for the people of both countries. The two leaders agreed to promote their countries' partnership to what they are calling a comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era. Joint statements say the two sides are looking to give each other more support as they take their own development paths, preserve respective core interests, and protect sovereignty and territorial integrity. Also covered are aligning development strategies and working together on economic issues, trade, and investment. Beijing and Moscow agreed to place high priority on areas such as security and coordination on international issues.
President Xi and Putin have also attended a gathering marking the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations.
Addressing the audience at the Bolshoi Theater of Russia, Putin said the bilateral relationship has gone through an extraordinary course of development over the past 7 decades. He said with mutual support, the two countries have promoted their relations to an unprecedentedly high level. He hailed the two countries' significant contributions to safeguarding international and regional security and stability, solving hotspot issues, and addressing new challenges and threats faced by humanity. In his speech at the gathering, Xi said the two countries are embracing yet another historic moment in bilateral relations. Xi said that the past 70 years have fully proved that China and Russia are good neighbors and true partners, as they were before and will be in the future. Xi said the two countries will always cherish their unbreakable bond forged with lives and blood during the Soviet Union's Great Patriotic War and the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression. Xi said just 1 day after the founding of the People's Republic of China, the Soviet Union recognized the country and set up diplomatic relations with it, noting that many Soviet experts helped New China lay its industrial foundation. He added that in the 21st century, China and Russia signed the landmark Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation and lifted their ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era, setting a paradigm for building a new type of international relations and a community with a shared future for humanity. Xi said the China-Russia relationship in the new era should be built on mutual trust and strong strategic support, adding that they should better support each other on issues concerning their respective core interests and keep a firm hand on the strategic direction of bilateral relations. At the gathering, the two heads of state watched a short video on people-to-people exchanges, as well as a show presented by Chinese and Russian artists.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry says Beijing and Moscow are now looking at multiple ways of strengthening their partnership and will look and work in tandem to drive global growth and development.
China and Russia will strengthen strategic communication and coordination. The two sides will further develop their mutual support on issues regarding their respective core interests. Key areas include cooperation on politics and safety, as well as people-to-people exchanges. The two countries will actively push forward cooperation to dock the Belt and Road Initiative with the Eurasian Economic Union. China and Russia will work together to promote multipolarity.
Transitional Military Council has denied dispersing a protest camp. After Monday's violence, the head of the council, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, apologized for the loss of life and vowed to investigate. According to an official from the Health Ministry, the death toll currently stands at 46. Burhan says he is ready to resume dialogue on a transition to civilian rule, but the opposition coalition has rejected the offer.
There is a lot of injustice. People are trying to take their rights by force. It has become an issue of murder or be murdered. There's an image replicated from the National Committee. It has become a matter of agendas. Omar al-Bashir left but brought Burhan and Hamedi. Burhan will leave. That will be the first agenda. Then we will have the second and third agendas. Where are they going? Where will it end? What about our children? We started from wanting to change the regime. Now the regime is falling completely. So the military council must either respond to our demands or leave.
Well, in some tragic news, 6 people have died and 17 others injured following Tuesday's night landslides in eastern Uganda's Bududa district. According to government officials and the Red Cross, around 50 people are still missing after the tragedy. Rescue mission is still ongoing, with the figures expected to rise. Bududa district, which lies on the border between Uganda and Kenya, has witnessed a series of landslides in the recent past. In 2010, at least 100 people were killed in a similar landslide in the area. The United Nations has scaled up prevention measures in the Ebola outbreak in the DRC to the highest level of emergency. It follows an increase in the number of the cases. Violence among armed groups has severely affected efforts to deal with the outbreak. The World Health Organization says the decision will see more funds allocated to the response. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more.
Healthcare workers trying to prevent the spread of the Ebola virus in eastern DRC have been targeted by armed groups in Beni, Butembo, and Katwa. That has seriously disrupted their efforts to stop the disease from spreading. But the UN has now stepped up Ebola prevention work to the highest level of emergency response in a bid to bring a swift end to the outbreak.
They have decided to escalate the level of intervention to the highest level, the L3 in the UN system, meaning that we mobilize more resources and we'll have more, not only financial resources, but more capacity on ground to really address all the pillars.
The UN activates such a response whenever agencies are unable to meet the needs on the ground. The Level 3 response has only previously been applied in Yemen, Syria, and Mozambique. According to the DRC Ministry of Health, the Ebola outbreak has now surpassed 2,000 cases, with more than 1,300 people reported dead since August last year. International health experts have now scaled up their response. DRC citizens in Kinshasa say they welcome the UN's decision.
I'm very happy that the UN has stepped up the Ebola response.
We are very, very happy for that, but what we are regretting that every time, that is the 5th or 6th time that Ebola hits Congo Democratic. They can't find any solution once.
The current Ebola outbreak is the 10th to occur in the DRC. It's the second worst in the world after that seen in West Africa in 2014. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The news continues on Africa Live. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines. President Museveni to deliver State of the Nation address today. The continent's largest print expo showcases latest innovations in South Africa.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
From Nairobi's city center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's head over to Uganda, where President Yoweri Museveni will deliver his State of the Nation address in the capital, Kampala, on Thursday. He is expected to spell out economic achievements as well as key issues that the country is facing. Preliminary figures from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics released last week indicate a slight economic slowdown. Uganda's growth is down 0.1 percentage points compared to last year, from 6.2% to 6.1%. A reading of the national budget from the 2019-2020 fiscal year will follow the president's address. Well, CGTN's Leon Sienga joins us from Kampala in Uganda on the State of the Nation address by President Museveni. Leon, thank you for taking time out to join us here on Africa Live. First things first, the president is expected to deliver his State of the Address today. Which key issues is he likely to touch on? Leon?
Well, certainly it's already a bright day here in Kampala. Just a few minutes away before we actually get into the main hall here, where we shall be listening to President Yoweri Museveni. Definitely some of the key issues that he'll be talking about will be the economy and a bit of the achievements that may have been attained over the past the financial year 2018-2019. And not much that has come through in terms of the figures from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, like you had said earlier, but definitely there'll be a couple of things that President Yoweri Museveni will be talking about. In terms of infrastructure, I believe he'll have quite a lot to talk about because of the enormous road projects that have been embarked on over the past year, and major still the launch of the Uganda Airlines, which has been a bit of a game changer in terms of how Uganda's approached the infrastructure development. But major still, again, will be regional security and internal security, matters of South Sudan and even still matters of Sudan. But most of all will be the issue of Uganda and Rwanda, tensions therein causing lots of worries for not just President Yoweri Museveni, but even still the citizens. So there will be quite a lot that President Museveni will be talking about. But yes, the economy, regional security and infrastructure could be some of the key issues.
All right, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the economy. The State of the Nation address comes amid declining economic growth. How do you think the president will react to this?
I believe there will be quite a mixed reaction on his part on how he'll actually react to this, because like earlier said, the Uganda Bureau of Statistics released figures and indicated that Uganda had about 0.1 downward trend in the economy compared to what it was in 2017-2018. That in itself is a regression in terms of the forward movement that should have been expected, but there will be lots of positives to pick. Infrastructure development, which will of course facilitate economic growth in the future, has been one of the areas that would be something of a positive that President Yoweri Museveni will talk about. But still talking about the economy, Uganda's debt in itself will be one of the major issues that we believe has caused a bit of that downward trend. Uganda's debt stands at about 11 billion Uganda shillings. That has been a worry for the World Bank. That in itself has been a worry for several of the economic analysts here. A lot of borrowing by the government has put Uganda in pretty much a precarious situation in terms of the economy. So we believe that while there's been a bit of a dent on one side, there could be something of a positive to talk about for President Yoweri Museveni.
All right, Leon, well said. Let's talk about it a little more, though. What measures do you think is likely to reverse the trend? Can you expatiate on that?
Well, it of course takes quite a lot of economic policies therein, but one of the major areas that President Museveni has embarked on has been the modernization of agriculture. He believes that value addition to some of the produces that come out of Uganda will spiral on the figures that Uganda should be gaining from the agricultural sector. But that in itself is only one area. Uganda has only recently been part of the Africa Free Trade Agreement. President Museveni recently said that that will just as well facilitate a bit of a change in how Uganda's figures and growth will be. So there will be a bit of a rigorous economic policy approach towards how Uganda could transform the downward trend so far. But of course, that goes down to how much money could be invested, how much money is available for Ugandans to spend in terms of changing that around.
Leon Sayenga, thank you for your insight and analysis. Excellent reporting. Thank you for bringing us that story. That's Leon Sayenga live in Kampala. And to South Africa now, where the government is set to draft a set of laws regulating consumption of cannabis. In September last year, the country's constitutional court made it legal to cultivate and use it at home. Experts at a recent health conference in Johannesburg say consideration needs to be given to a number of legal and ethical issues to govern the use of cannabis. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The ethics around cannabis use were debated at a recent health conference in Johannesburg. South Africa's parliament must consider legal and medical aspects when regulating cannabis. It can be grown and used freely at home, but it can't be bought or sold. And according to the Drugs Act, only 115 grams can be carried.
If a police officer finds a person on cannabis, he needs to ask questions to determine whether the cannabis on the person is for personal use, personal consumption, personal cultivation. And then he'll have to determine if that amount is actually for his personal use or for dealing.
Marijuana has been reclassified as a prescriptive drug. It's increasingly being used as a pain deterrent and an appetite stimulant for cancer and HIV-positive patients. But the effects of psychoactive ingredient THC are yet to be fully examined.
More research needs to be done in terms of the impact and the effect of THC and other cannabinoids, okay, on people generally. And then based on that research, a percentage or level that is medically allowable will be determined, just like every other medical product.
Cannabis-based products have now also become freely available on the market.
Cannabis oils and things like that, these fall on that category of unregulated herbal medication. Okay, that's the way we are. So that's why those people are able to sell it. But even then, there's a certain limit to the concentration of THC that can be, or cannabinoids that can even be sold commonly that's legal. It's about 0.1 milligram or something like that, which is allowed by law.
South Africa has less than 18 months to iron out the grey areas around the legal use of cannabis. With the country's 6th administration now in place, there's likely to be more movement on the matter. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Staying in South Africa, where the largest commercial printing expo has landed in Cape Town. During the two-day stopover, the Africa Print Expo will showcase the latest in digital printing technology from industry leaders, as well as entire digital print process. Trending at the moment is wide format printing technology, which can increase the printing industry's potential across the continent.
Fujifilm is here today having their wide format inkjet technologies, specifically UV wide format inkjets. So we have our LED 1600 printer on the stand where we're showing lots of creative samples, innovative samples. That's what Fujifilm is all about, just showing our quality of our technology and what you can do with it, so what business opportunities we can offer our customers.
We're here today to check up some machines and suppliers so that we can update our system there, because we're looking for expansion. We are expanding now, so we need to bring in new machines and new suppliers, better prices, good quality, not only good suppliers but better quality from them, so that we also give the customer some better quality, so that we grow more and more every year.
The Chinese embassy in Kenya held a cocktail party on Wednesday to welcome the new Chinese ambassador to Kenya, His Excellency Mr. Wu Peng. Kenya's Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs lauded the ambassador's illustrious career as a diplomat and praised the shared values between the two countries. Among the invited guests were members of the diplomatic cooperation, members of parliament, and representatives of the Kenyan government. Ambassador Wu has promised to strengthen the relationship between China and Kenya.
Ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China and the 56th anniversary of the establishment of China-Kenya diplomatic relations. As the new Chinese ambassador to Kenya, I will work with all of you to enhance cooperation and continue to support the work of the UNEP and the UN Habitats.
Ambassador, it is my pleasure to really, on behalf of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta and the government of Kenya, to say welcome to Nairobi, and may this trajectory of strong relationship continue. And we are confident because we share certain very strong values. Multilateralism is a shared value. A rule-based world is a shared value. Shared prosperity is a shared value.
Still on matters of the environment, Zimbabwe has allayed concerns over its recent lifting of a ban on buffalo hunting using a bow and arrow, saying it's drawn on over a decade of research to arrive at the decision. Wildlife trophy hunting in the southern African nation has been under the spotlight since the killing of Cecil the lion by an American hunter in 2015. CGTN's Farai Wakatuya has more.
Thrill-seeking wildlife hunters are in for a more authentic experience, taking down buffalo the way African hunters did in ancient times, albeit using more modern equipment. Zimbabwe has lifted the bow hunting ban to target big spenders who've been requesting permits to do so.
But animal activists fear the method, thought to be less accurate than traditional firearms, could just injure and maim the animals, leading to slow and painful deaths.
But hunt operators who've been patiently lobbying for the reforms claim to have evidence to the contrary.
This has been happening, but only on experimental basis for the last 10 years, where the officials and government wanted to completely assess to see whether it can actually derive the benefits without necessarily causing a lot of inflicting pain on the animal or injury. And the 10 years of experience actually taught us to see that the new technology on bow hunting is such that it's becoming more lethal and even better than traditional ammunition.
The National Parks and Wildlife Management Authority says only pre-inspected heavy-duty arrowheads will be permissible on hunts that will be monitored by trained rangers.
This is part of diversifying our revenue generation. We don't get money from back government. We are running a business. We need to put money back into conservation. So we have just diversified our options for our tourists.
While buffaloes are now fair game for archers, elephants, hippopotamus, and giraffes remain on the list of wildlife that can only be hunted using firearms. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The International Organization for Migration is bringing back thousands of Ethiopians who were stuck in war-torn Yemen. So far, over 700 people have returned in a little over a week, and the goal is to bring back 2,300 people. In April, the IOM estimated about 3,000 irregular migrants, predominantly Ethiopians, had been rounded up where they lived under appalling conditions in the southern part of Yemen. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi visited a transit center where the migrants are kept in Addis Ababa. Let's take a look.
25-year-old Yemen Hassan Tarekeng left Ethiopia 3 months ago. His destination was Saudi Arabia. He paid people smugglers more than $2,500 to help him get there.
I was hurting inside. My wife is in Saudi Arabia. My plan was to meet her there. I used to advise my friends not to go, but my wife nagged me why I was staying in Ethiopia, yet she was working there. She stopped sending me money. I felt belittled and decided to go there too.
Together with 9 other friends, they risked the journey by boat via Djibouti. But upon arrival in war-torn Yemen, which is a transit point, they were all taken away by the Yemeni authorities. He ended up in a holding camp where he says they were tortured and only given 1 piece of bread a day. Yemen has been devastated by an ongoing civil war, which began in 2015. For 3 months, he lost hope until the International Organization for Migration arrived and offered to take migrants back home.
I didn't believe I was coming back until I boarded the plane. We were many, and to me, being selected from the group is like winning a DV lottery and traveling to America.
The International Organization for Migration has so far evacuated 770 Ethiopians.
Most of those who have so far returned are below the age of 18. We have spoken to some of them and they say their families took loans and sent them to work with the hope that they would return and make their families have better lives.
The IOM says the evacuations, which began on May 28th, may last for 2 weeks.
And originally we planned evacuations on average of about 3 or 4 charter flights per week. But unfortunately, the permissions granted to our operations in order for us to land planes in Yemen and then safely depart from Yemen to Addis have changed. So it looks currently that we'll only be able to run 2 charter flights a week.
At the center, the returnees are given shelter, food and medication before being assisted to return to their home areas.
For some of the migrants, we'll be able to provide reintegration assistance. But I should hasten to mention that this will be a very, very small percentage of the entire caseload. And that's a fact because that's a fact resulting from resource limitations on our part. So the reintegration assistance will be in the form of livelihood support, but also education continuation and other forms of assistance that will be identified depending on the migrants' needs.
For these returnee migrants, a fresh journey begins, that of making a life here at home. Yemen says he will not return to his family because he has come back with nothing. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
2 young engineers in Cote d'Ivoire are introducing locally assembled and programmed drones to help farmers boost crop production. It's part of a drive in the agricultural sector across Africa to use the internet to increase crop yields. CGTN's Terry Wangari reports.
Investive Group specializes in precision agriculture. This is the use of technology like drones, sensors, or GPS devices which allows farmers and researchers to monitor and optimize their crop growth.
In the past, we would physically irrigate the farm, but today, with this technology, we can irrigate the crops from above with the use of drones, as well as spraying fertilizers from above. That's why I was very interested in this new technology. I wanted this company, Inventive Group, to work with us and help our workers.
The drones are used to capture aerial imagery of crops and farms. This is analyzed to identify the types of crops, the potential yield, and health. For registered farmers such as Adu, this technology is groundbreaking.
When we talk about precision agriculture, it's really about being able to identify and pinpoint the exact areas of the farm that may have issues. For example, based on data received from the drone, we are able to assess the health of the crops or areas that need a boost in growth, and we compare and contrast to find out if there are issues around water irrigation or issues around crop fertility and so on.
Agriculture in the country accounts for 22% of the GDP and 75% of exports. It has proved challenging in recent years to boost crop production. However, the establishment of Côte d'Ivoire Drone has facilitated the access to technology locally.
It was challenging for us at the beginning, but it has become easier over time. We can now assemble up to 4 drones a day. If we have all the pieces here, we can put out 4 drones a day.
With the advancement in technology, farmers in Africa are expected to embrace the new innovation. Despite this, the technical skills gap remains a challenge. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
This is Africa Live on CGTN. We've got your business news coming up next. Here's a look at the headlines. EU officials hold the first formal meeting with government representatives in Zimbabwe. Angola turns its focus to natural gas to counter crude oil price shocks.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The European Union has held its first formal meetings with the government of Zimbabwe. Head of delegation Timo Alkonen says the bloc has identified positives from Zimbabwe's staff-monitored program. The program, which is an international monetary fund policy, is meant to reduce government expenditures and set straight the country's waning economy. Zimbabwe will have the multilateral institution review the country's economy quarterly until 2020. The EU has had several informal meetings with the Zimbabwean officials in an effort to normalize relations. Part of a raft of policies proposed by the IMF, which the government consented to, include ending the printing of more bond notes, which were losing value at an alarming rate, reducing its expenditure, and ceasing to borrow from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to finance its unjustifiable programs. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has renewed the central bank's governor's term. Patrick Njoroge worked as an advisor at the International Monetary Fund before becoming governor in 2015. His new term in office comes as the country prepares to usher in new notes in a bid to crack down on graft and money laundering. The governor's first term also saw the government introduce caps of commercial lending rates in 2016 and the introduction of a moratorium on the issuance of new commercial bank licenses in 2015. At the time, the temporary closure of Chase Bank Kenya, which followed the closure of Imperial Bank, another mid-sized lender, and Dubai Bank Kenya, had denied confidence in the industry, which has also seen an increase in bad debts. Angola has huge gas reserves, but due to a focus on crude oil in the past, it hasn't fully developed its downstream gas reserves. That is all set to change, as delegates at the Angola Oil and Gas Conference heard. Now, CGTN's Angola's Angela Coppola reports from Luanda. Let's take a look.
Angola doesn't have to look very far for support and lessons learned in developing and monetizing a downstream gas industry. The production of fertilizer is a good starting point, but there's an equally pressing issue.
It's a very good trend that Angola is starting to use natural gas in power generation, I believe starting from this year. So Angolan government set a goal for natural gas to reach 20% of power generation by 2025, but still it's not, it's a good target, but not really ambitious, because in Nigeria, natural gas represents 82% of power generation.
Monetizing the country's gas stream is seen almost as a foregone conclusion.
Angola will have to. I mean, we're going through major changes next year in the oil industry with the new environmental regulations, which will make all the imported product much more expensive. And Angola has a major issue is basically the power generation, which is run on diesel, and diesel will be the most impacted feedstock during the next 5 years.
Another area that the country could target is liquid natural gas exports and capacity, according to an analyst. But it has to move quickly.
Today, Angola exports less than 5 million tons per annum. Of course, it's a very low level compared to the huge resources which Angola has. If we look at the neighboring countries in the region, such as Mozambique, Tanzania, Senegal, they have comparable gas resources, and they are going to build large-scale LNG projects within short term.
The Angolan government has shown a willingness to explore and develop the gas sector. It became an observer of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum at the beginning of the year.
It takes time because you need the private sector to come. You need the marketing oil companies to come on stream in the countries to really make this diversification possible. And we are at the early stage. We only have, I believe, 3 marketing companies in Angola right now. When in a country which is pretty similar in terms of population, like Tanzania, you probably have 25. So, but it's coming. It takes time, and I believe that within the next 5 years, this diversification will be accomplished.
Angola has an abundance of oil and gas, so the move to gas and monetizing that downstream is going to be a challenge, because it would be quite easy to move back into the oil sector again. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Luanda, Angola.
Fiat Chrysler has announced it is withdrawing its $35 billion merger offer for Renault. The deal would have created the world's 3rd biggest automaker. According to sources close to the French carmakers board, said FCA took the decision after France sought to delay a decision on the deal. The deal would have altered the landscape for rivals, including General Motors and Peugeot maker PSA Group, which recently held inconclusive talks with Fiat Chrysler. FCA Renault and its 15% shareholder, the French state, had been locked in talks over the Italian-American manufacturer's bid. France had broadly welcomed the tie-up on conditions it guaranteed Renault's domestic jobs and plants. Analysts had warned of complications, including Renault's existing alliance with Nissan. 2 of America's largest chain stores recently announced they would have to raise prices if new tariffs on Chinese goods are implemented. Economists say that would hit lower-income Americans the hardest. CGTN's Karina Huber has more.
Walmart, the world's largest retailer, recently warned prices at its U.S. stores will likely rise. In May, its chief financial officer said, "Our goal is to be the low-price leader, but increased tariffs will increase prices for consumers." Macy's is also warning of possible price hikes ahead. The alerts came after the Trump administration increased tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports from 10% to 25%. and as it threatened tariffs on an additional $300 billion worth of goods, essentially all Chinese imports not already hit. Research by a group of leading economists published during the Obama administration suggests lower-income Americans are the hardest hit by tariffs. Their report says the burden of tariffs is 5 times as heavy for the bottom tenth of households as for the top tenth. That's because lower-income groups tend to use more of their take-home pay to cover basic needs, and they tend to buy more low-cost imports.
I mean, why should prices rise? Just because of a trade. I mean, it has nothing to do with any of us. It has everything to do with politics and the government.
Right, raise prices on the clothes, like that makes people not want to go and shop at Macy's just because of that.
Retailers like Macy's are in a tough position. They may need to raise prices to cover increased costs, but they don't want to raise prices too much or they could lose business. Karina Huber, CGTN, New York.
The news continues on Africa Live. We've got a lot more wonderful and amazing stories coming your way, including half of South Africa's President Ramaphosa's new cabinet are women.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. In a first for South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has installed a cabinet in which half of all ministers are women. Ramaphosa, whose African National Congress party won a general election earlier this month, has also slimmed down what he called a bloated cabinet from 36 to 28 ministers. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
A youthful and gender-balanced cabinet. This is the new look of the 2019 South African National Executive. A cabinet that has been warmly welcomed from many corners of this South African society. In appointing his new national cabinet, President Ramaphosa had taken into account a number of considerations. Those include a generational mix. He also delivered on his undertaking that his cabinet will in fact have women dominating.
This is in fulfillment of our commitment to giving young people roles of responsibility in all sectors of society. This is part of a generational transition in which we are creating what we call a pipeline of leaders to take our country further into the future.
At least one political analyst says Ramaphosa is making an important statement.
It's very important to balance gender politics because particularly at the national policy-making level, you want to make sure that a country is able to deal with the diversity of issues that affect the whole of our society. We know that Rwanda was the country that was ahead first, and I think South Africa is making a very important statement which is likely to be followed by other countries. There is also the new cabinet represents fairly younger women whom I believe are very excited and have space to make an impact.
South Africans have varying views about the new cabinet.
For me, it's fair and it's good. And it's something like it's a change. It's doing well than before, what was happening before. So for me, I think it's great.
I'm particularly happy as a woman. I hope that our issues that we deal with in the workplace and in South Africa as a whole will be addressed.
The president is giving everybody a chance the youth and the women, so and the young ones, which we must give them a chance so that we can see how they can take us from our problem of the economy.
We've been waiting for the ANC to include a bit of fresh faces, you know, young blood. So I'm very, very happy with the cabinet.
It's now up to these cabinet members to ensure that the faith bestowed on them will result in the embetterment of the lives of ordinary South Africans. Yodisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, we've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't touch that dial. Let's take a sneak peek at the headline. South Africa stumbled to third defeat at the Cricket World Cup against India.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout,